Viewers, top voice this week is from Saudi Arabia. It was the first stop in Trump's three-nation tour to the Middle East, which had business as its top agenda. And we have Jerry Anzarello, who's the CEO of Diriyah Company, joining us live from Riyadh to talk more about what it was in terms of the meeting and the discussions that happened. So thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. You were part of the delegation that spoke to the American CEOs, to Donald Trump. First, I want to understand from you your first impressions of this meeting that took place.
Yes, this was a really truly historic visit on many levels. Diplomatically, commercially, geopolitically, sociologically. And, it's interesting because when you're elected president of the United States, it's only the second time in American history that you had a gap of 4 years in between another presidency. So for the president to come back to Saudi Arabia 8 years later, because on his first trip, Vision 2030 was just starting to take root. But now to see the sociological transformations and to see all the women thriving in the workplace, and like he met one of our chief architects on the models that we presented him of today, and he was just so impressed with her and the team, a Saudi woman, because 39% of our staff are Saudi women, superstars. So he was very impressed with that, very impressed with the progress that was made. So instead of seeing renderings all over the kingdom, and then, he goes to Qatar and the Emirates, which are also doing remarkably well. So I think he was very surprised with the deliverables.
That's an important point you make, which brings me to ask you, what, according to you, were the biggest takeaways from this high-profile meeting between the US CEOs and, of course, important CEOs from the Middle East, including yourself?
I think the biggest takeaways were the fact that the two countries are so close. So now what's going to happen with technology in the future in terms of AI and chips and computering, the leadership role that Saudi wants to take in that, and the leadership role that America wants to take in it. Obviously, India is a giant player with its capabilities now globally in the tech sector. So the fact that there were so many contracts signed in computer development, AI, manufacturing of chips, and you had all the big leaders here. You had Elon Musk here, you had all of the big AI leaders, the CEOs here. It was a very productive trip.
Indeed. Which brings me to ask you, how do you see America's larger role in the region? Do you think business being at the core of this realigned relationship?
Well, I think there was two big agenda items. Obviously, business and commerce is huge, because what are you going to see in terms of development out of the Gulf in the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to be substantial. You have very young heads of state now, all moderate, all vision forward looking, all tech driven, right? All quality of life heads of state. So that's great. And America has the expertise that the region wants. But look at the great leadership coming out of India now. Look where India was 30 years ago in terms of technology, both hardware and software. And you're one of the great leaders in the world now. So the same way there's a very strong relationship between America and India, there's now a very strong relationship between America and the Gulf and America.
It's a controversial trip when you talk about Trump's domestic audience. What do you think will be the biggest wins that President Trump will speak to his domestic audience when he concludes this trip?
The big takeaway is that everybody wants safety and security and quality of life in the Middle East. It's a big agenda of the president, that people can live in peace and thrive and provide for their families and have opportunities for the next 10, 20, 30 years. One of the things that the president was very impressed about Saudi was that the population is very young. The aggregate age is only 29.1, the median age, very educated, and they're very positive about the future. So if you're going to have a positive societies that are safe and secure, it promotes prosperity. The president has been very active in trying to be a peacemaker around the world, Ukraine, certainly Gaza, and with the Palestinian-Israeli issue. There was a big announcement with lifting the sanctions in Syria to give the wonderful people of Syria a chance to get back to a better quality of life for them and their families. So I think the big thing was peace and prosperity, ensuring safety and security in the region, which will benefit America and everyone. And then also using these contracts now to determine what the new technologies and new industries are going to be in the next 10 and 20 years, and having those relationships in place.
All right, we leave it there. Mr. Jerry, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV to decode that important business relationship between India and KSA. All right.